The recital hall was a masterpiece of xenobiological architecture, a soothing blend of soft, bioluminescent fungi and gently humming crystalline structures. It was a place of quiet reverence, designed to showcase the cultural pinnacles of the many species within the galactic accord. Tonight's performer was a human, a rarity in these circles, and the audience of various physiologies hummed with polite, subdued curiosity. He stood near the back, his frilled cranial crest shifting in hues of mild lavender, the color of casual disdain. A renowned music critic from a species whose hearing ranged into realms humans considered ultrasonic, he had found Terran music, in his extensive experience, to be a quaint study in limitation. It was arithmetic where there should be calculus, a simple sketch where there should be a holographic symphony. The instrument before him, a polished wooden object called a piano, was a particular relic. His companion, a gelatinous being whose form shimmered in a containment suit, pulsed gently beside him. They say she has studied the great works of her world, the being communicated via subtle vibrations in the suit's fluid. They say many things, he replied, his voice a series of modulated clicks. I have heard their great works. Emotional, certainly, but technically bereft. They operate within 12 tones. 12. It is like discussing astrophysics with only a handful of numbers. He adjusted his ceremonial robe, the fabric woven from metallic spider silk. She will play with passion, and they will be polite. It is always the same. The human took the stage. She was small, by galactic standards, dressed in a simple, dark garment. She offered no grand gesture, no telepathic prelude of artistic intent, as was customary. She merely sat on the bench, adjusted it slightly, and placed her hands in her lap for a moment, her head bowed. The critic's crest flushed a deeper, violet, unprofessional. No connection to the audience. Began. It was a piece by a composer named Rachmaninoff. The notes were complex, a storm of human emotion rendered into sound. Her technique, to any human observer, would have been flawless, a torrent of power and delicate precision. The audience listened, their various sensory organs attuned. They heard the labor, the mathematical progression, the raw feeling. It was impressive for a human. He listened, his sophisticated auditory organs dissecting the performance. He heard the slight strain in the upper register, the microscopic lag in a treacherous arpeggio. He leaned over to his companion, the clicks of his voice deliberately soft yet carrying. See, the ambition outweighs the architecture. The emotion is a crutch for structural weakness. It is a decent effort for a species with such primitive auditory cortex. But as art, it is a child's earnest drawing. His companion pulsed an uneasy yellow, but said nothing. The piece concluded with a thunderous final chord. The hall erupted in the standard polite response, tentacles waving, gas bladders inflating, a respectful shimmer of light from the fungal walls. The human stood, gave a brief nod, and instead of leaving, she turned back to the piano. A murmur went through the crowd. The program listed only one piece. This was irregular. She sat again. The hall fell silent, this silence tinged with confusion. She did not launch into another complex sonata. She simply sat, still and quiet, for a long moment. Then she slowly, deliberately, lifted a single finger on her right hand. The critic's crest rippled with magenta amusement. A single note? Was this some form of surrender? A performance art statement on her species' inadequacy? He almost clicked a laugh. She brought the finger down. The note was C, a fundamental frequency. But it was not just a note. It was a perfect, absolute, and resonant C. It emerged from the piano, not as a transient sound, but as a solid, living entity. It hung in the air of the hall, and as it hung, it began to unfold. The crystalline structures in the walls, tuned to resonate with harmonic frequencies, lit up not in their usual gentle pulse, but in a brilliant, cascading spectrum. The note revealed itself to contain within it not just its own tone, but the ghost of its entire harmonic series, a fractal cascade of sound that reached into spectra no human ear could consciously hear, but that every other species in the hall could. For the gelatinous being, the note was a deep foundational vibration that structured its fluid form into temporary, beautiful lattice of pressure, a physical massage of profound pleasure. For a species of moth-like auditors in the upper balcony, the high harmonics were a blazing trail of pheromone-like sound, telling a story of cosmic birth. For the critic, it was an avalanche. His ultrasonic hearing, his pride, was not just engaged. It was inundated, flooded, rewired. That single held note was a key that unlocked a dimensional vault of sound. He heard the history of the piano's wood, the sigh of the tree it came from. He heard the ghost of every note ever played on that instrument, a whispering choir layered beneath the fundamental. He heard the resonant frequency of the hall itself, of his own bones, of the blood in his secondary heart. It was not music as he understood it. It was music as physics, as truth, as a foundational pillar of reality made briefly audible. The note changed, not in pitch, but in character. It became a lens. Through it, he heard the despair and hope that had forged the human species. He heard the collective gasp of a planet looking at the stars. He heard the quiet, terrible loneliness of a solitary mind, and the roaring, defiant joy of its connection to others through something as simple as a vibration in the air. This was not 12 limited tones. This was the universe expressing itself through a single point of focus, and that point was a human will. He felt his body go rigid. His cranial crest was a blinding, shifting mosaic of colors he could not control, broadcasting shock, awe, and a profound, utter dismantling of his worldview. He was not hearing music. He was being seen by it. Every arrogant thought, every dismissive click, every assumption of superiority was laid bare and made insignificant against the sheer, monumental presence contained in that one sustained vibration dot around him. The hall was a tableau of stunned revelation. Beings were frozen in postures of transcendence. The fungal lights had grown to a soft, solar brilliance. The air itself seemed thicker, charged with meaning. And then, after what felt like an eternity, she lifted her finger. The silence that followed was not an absence. It was a fullness. It was the memory of the note, echoing in the mind, in the body, in the very structure of the hall. It was heavier, more profound than any sound. Slowly, the human rose. She offered the same small, humble nod to the audience. There was no grandstanding, no triumph in her eyes. There was only a quiet certainty, the look of someone who had shared a simple, devastating truth. She walked off the stage. For a full standard minute, no one moved. No communication passed between beings. Then, as if a spell broke, the hall erupted. This was not polite applause. It was a cacophony of pure, unfiltered reaction. Sonic booms from vocal sacs, frantic light pulses, the slapping of tentacles, a harmonic hum from the crystals that threatened to shatter them. It was chaos. It was reverence. He stood, unmoving, in the center of the storm. His companion, now glowing a steady, awed gold, vibrated against him. You said it was a child's drawing. The vibration formed into words. He could not click a response. His voice mechanism felt broken. He could only stare at the empty space where the human had been, at the simple, polished wooden box that had become a portal. He had scoffed at the piano. He had scoffed at her skill. He had scoffed at the very possibility. The human had not played a piece to refute him. She had not needed to. She had simply played a single note, and in doing so, had played the history, the soul, and the terrifying, beautiful potential of her entire species. And in that note, he had heard his own smallness. He finally moved, turning to leave the hall, the riotous adulation washing over him meaninglessly. His crest had settled into a dull, steady gray, the color of shame and awakening. He had come to judge a performance. He was leaving having witnessed a fact. Humanity's art was not a weaker version of something greater. It was a different language altogether, one that could say more with a single, perfect syllable than his entire culture could with 1,000 symphonies. And the galaxy had just heard its first unforgettable word.